If I were to tell you that the anime you're currently looking at is one of my favorites in a very long time, you most likely would raise an eyebrow because of its simple and formulaic appearance. A series that from first glance looks like the typical high school comedy / drama, but underneath that does a whole lot more. I'm going to be talking about the anime with minor spoilers and then hopping over to its source material later. The anime is about Arata Kaizaki, who gets chosen for an experiment that tries to reform NEETs to become functioning people of society, and it does this by making them redo 1 year of high school. The incentive is, if it goes well, when he completes it, he can possibly get a good, well-paying job. It's all done by giving him a pill that makes him look like a teenager, so the anime is about his time in high school. Aside from the experiment, as soon as he goes to school, ReLIFE looks and acts like the usual high school series, primarily presenting humor and introducing the cast that all come off as one note. But making him an adult and putting him into this very common setting really opens up the writing in new ways. He's much older and wiser, so his perspective allows him to poke fun of and subvert a lot of the cliches and tropes common in the genre, like test and school activities with an in-universe reason that keeps it grounded. It purposely looks average, but Arata is what changes it. I always like to say that ReLIFE presents you these common story beats in their purest form just for it to immediately take them somewhere else. It puts them in your face just to tell you that it isn't going to do that. Like Kazaomi and Reina, friends where the girl is a tsundere and the boy extends to her feelings and his own. For the bevy of series that fit that description, and with those, the romance is typically held off till the end, even though it's pretty obvious how close the leads are to each other. We've had that feeling of just wanting to tell them or give them a little nudge, and that's Arata. He and a few others quickly figure out that they have something, even asking Kazaomi if they're dating. He obviously says no, and for the rest of the series he gets teased by him making fun of his trope in the process. Arata's the one that makes him realize his feelings, making him take the initiative. These characters end up together in the same season they are introduced in, which doesn't feel rushed or empty because when it begins we can tell they have a history, and it does a good job in exploring it through their interactions and dialogue. But the best example is the cast of students who all seem simple like I just mentioned. Chizuru being deadpan, someone who doesn't emote or understand emotion that well. Something very common in anime / manga, and seeing her disconnect with the world is very funny, especially after she meets Arata. Having a sweet chemistry with him that is always humorous due to how different they are. But immediately after she enters the story, it pulls away the curtain to see an aspect of who she really is. And what's behind it isn't just another silly joke, but something with a lot more meaning. The writing explores who they are, which makes all the humor better because it all stems from somewhere real. The way they act, their hobbies, all of it has a purpose. There's something about seeing these happy-go-lucky characters who look like they have no problem in the world turn into scared, vulnerable people who deal with the same insecurities we've all felt, like fears of the future and self-worth, makes you want to root for them. They're already charming from the start, but you fall in love with them as the anime progresses. We're presented the jokes first before we see the human behind it, making it very powerful.
That I talk strangely. I hear that a lot. I'm a high school girl, yet there's not a single person I'd call my close friend. It's always been that way for me, and I never considered it a problem, but it's more and more clear that society thinks it is.
Arata is the monkey wrench in the system, drawing off the story. He's not supposed to be there. He's even aware of that. If you got rid of him, it would be the same tired narrative we've seen a million times. He's what allows the series to break down the characters, which includes him. He's not a NEET by choice. He was someone who worked and tried hard for his life to go well, but for unforeseen circumstances drew him off that track. How he is in school gives us a glimpse of who he once was, someone confident and very attentive to everything around him. So seeing him as someone who just gave up on the world and on himself is heartbreaking, but makes us believe in him even more. And in a full circle way, his exploration comes from the students. When he sees them struggle with problems, he always tries to help. As an adult who's experienced the things they're going through, he gives them genuine advice or insight that always makes him reflect on who he is. ReLIFE deals with PTSD, depression, social insecurities, but it all feels real. It does a great job in showing mental illness in a way that anybody can understand or relate to, even showing how it can spawn and the long-lasting effects it can have on someone, and it does this while not sacrificing the comedy. It deals with heavy topics but balances itself out with humor that doesn't feel cheap. If you're laughing at a scene, that means the characters are too. When they're having fun and enjoying themselves, it feels earned after seeing their hardship. When they learn from their mistakes and overcome outcome would slowly consume them, it's always cathartic. So many moments have stuck with me because I wasn't expecting them and because of how well written they are. All the arcs build off each other, making a very convincing story. Once the plotline ends, it isn't just done. It stays and becomes a constant for the rest of the series, seeing the long-term effects and intersecting with later plotlines. Doing this makes the world itself invested in what's happening. And by the world, I mean the cast. The characters have been there since the beginning, and we see their bonds develop with all the things they go through. So when something is wrong between any of them, they care just as much as the reader/watcher. Due to this, as you continue to experience the story, there are so many full circle moments of huge payoff, either in an emotional or funny way, because we've seen how one from early on led all the way to it. They're always clever and leave a big impact on you and the characters. Something else it does is that Arata's real life is only 1 year. By giving him a finite amount of time, since this is his only chance for a better life, he doesn't want to mess it up, adding weight to him while cleverly avoiding a problem that plagues most manga. They sometimes feel like they can go on forever with no ending in sight, but here, from the start, an end is clearly presented. The writing found a way to use the setting as a storytelling element. Progress is subtly kept tracked with the seasons, school uniforms, and events. It never feels like an episode or chapter was a waste of time. It makes every single moment feel like it matters, especially when it came to the anime. The source material is serialized, showing every single one after another with a ton of detail and dialogue. Chapters fly by and feel dense to the overall story. The anime was able to trim the fat, removing certain pieces of it without at all sacrificing the core significance of them. It's able to combine several single moments across many different chapters into ones that can be as short as 2 minutes, that still tell you the same information they would have individually while not feeling rushed, which is how it was able to adapt over 100 of them into 13 episodes. Also why in general the series is just so easy to binge. The webcomic is what grants this. Since it was being released online, it allowed it to break away from typical manga conventions. Chapters are being made for books, so the panels are limited to a page, which has caused many to look similar when it comes to its layout. It can sometimes be too much or too little at once. Here, Soyayoi took a much more simplified approach, having them be presented one by one instead of all at once while having 2 panel styles for them. You have some that look like they're in a frame that are used to focus in on specific points, actions, and dialogue, and the other being big art spreads to show multiple things at once or to show something significant. Something else that ReLIFE was able to do was use color, having a range of warm and cool ones while playing with patterns to convey the mood of moments, characters, and the setting, while also coloring speech bubbles to emphasize certain things when necessary in a way that manga couldn't. The colors really add so much energy to the art, and there are even times where it's only speech bubbles, but the visuals tell you everything you need to know. Or even the reverse, where she uses the simplified paneling in conjunction with the coloring to show a slow change in the character. As you can see, she alternates between 2 great art styles, one used for comedy and the other for grounded moments. The anime couldn't recreate how often she switches between them for the reason that it would be really jarring, so it stays with the more standard art most of the time. So while some scenes don't have it, TMS made new ones for others as a nice way to keep this important aspect of the comic, as well as remaking any part of it or all of it when they get the chance to, which is great because these are fan favorites since they're so delightful and always lead to a good laugh. Yayoi-san knew that this would be read on computers and cell phones, so she structured it to take advantage of that. Every speech bubble, effect, and pattern pulls the reader down, presenting the story clearly. And while all these aspects individually sound good, the art, color, paneling styles, and structure, it's when they're all put together that it becomes something amazing. Framed ones that are usually white being colored or patterned, enhancing the mood and atmosphere of the already solid art inside of it, while also leading into the big widespreads. You see the reverse too, big art spreads having the smaller ones inside of them to give extra detail to the situation. Since it was structured on scrolling down, Yayoi-san used the colors as a way to make transitions like fades to blacks, whites, and other scenes. With the small panels being used in conjunction, it can really change how certain moments feel. Since they are being shown one by one, she used scrolling as a great way to surprise the reader. Text bubbles will be in complete white, but as it continues, the color and pattern come in, revealing the actual feeling behind it. Or the bubbles being a specific color to inform you on who's talking or that someone has entered the scene. Altogether, makes it an extremely dynamic comic. It's constantly changing, never showing you too much of the same thing while making it all naturally flow into one another. And as it continues, she plays around with it in even cooler ways. She used her medium to enhance the story and make it something completely different, which is why when it came to the anime, even though it adapts the story well, The awesome effects and coloring were lost in translation. It's also why you can't read this like a normal manga. Some sites split it up and post them page by page as if it was one, taking away so much from it because it's awkwardly cut into parts, breaking its flow. The webcomic is something unique, which is what makes going from the anime to it, or even starting from the beginning, worth it on a whole other level. You'll be able to enjoy the same story in a very different way, and that's something special.
Congratulations! You've been selected as Test Subject 001 for the Kanto branch of the ReLIFE Laboratory. Isn't that great? It's so nice to meet you, Chizuru Hishiro.
The reveal that Chizuru is the first ReLIFE test subject is one of my favorite plot twists in a very long time due to how multifaceted it is. It really informs her character, justifying what she says and does, informing us how aware she is of these actions. It's a great way of showing how vulnerable and scared she is, just like Arata, and if anything, even more so because this is her second experiment. It greatly changes how you view a lot of moments from the beginning of the series, changing the context of certain pieces of dialogue, and some having completely new meaning, some even making more sense now. The reveal makes so much sense for her, changes how you view season 1 while also changing the dynamic for the rest of the series onward. We now have another very different perspective to follow alongside Arata. Their relationship was slowly developed throughout the first season, turning into a love story by the end, which even the main character wasn't okay with. He didn't like the idea of a grown man being with a high school girl. The reveal works as payoff to this while also making it the primary focus of the second half. Her interest in Arata is believable since he's the first person to help her out of the goodness of his own heart. He's the only one she opens up to about her faults. Their chemistry is engrossing due to how they naturally bounce off one another while also bringing out the best in each other's personality because they're so different. Arata is dumb in studies but more knowledgeable in social environments, while Chizuru is the opposite, ironically making her innocent for an adult, creating some great moments of disconnect between them, which I really appreciate. Their feelings for each other isn't presented in the typical embarrassing blushing scenes, but through their interactions. They slowly gravitate toward each other over the first half, and that is sold in how they are around each other. You can clearly see how much they get each other and enjoy the other's company even though they contrast heavily. She's now a main character, and the story doesn't rehash scenarios from the beginning to give us insight on what was going through her head. We can infer that everything Arata is worried about, she is too, which leads to my other favorite thing about it. ReLIFE gives an actual reason to why the obvious love interests can't confess to each other. So many romance anime and manga will have characters that clearly like each other, but for whatever reason they never confess until the end. But here, since both are test subjects, they can't be honest about whom they are since the experiment will end. They don't morally agree with these feelings, making this interesting internal conflict for both of them because of how close they are to each other. The romance never felt like a subplot from the beginning, it was naturally integrated to everything while also challenging our leads with new ideas and feelings. They are such a great pair because of how much they support one another and make the other better. The experiment in general really subverts genre conventions while giving it this air of uncertainty that can be felt throughout the story. You never know where it's going from here. Having two leads that differ greatly evolved it in a way that always keeps it fresh. I really love the second half of ReLIFE because everything in it is so fleshed out like its first while introducing new plot threads that tie up loose ends before the finale, which is why when it came to the 4-episode OVAs, I have some issues with them. Since they were standard length episodes, it rushes through the material. So many moments that are very important to the characters aren't the same anymore. The second half is used to explore Chizuru even more and flesh out her romance with Arata, but also to look into Kazuomi. He's the only one from the cast the anime didn't delve into, which is why it sucks that these two got shafted. Both have their respective arcs that serve a purpose in challenging their flaws. With Chizuru, it's the school festival. It's important because throughout it she's realizing and affirming her feelings for Arata while also overcoming her lack of communication skills when it comes to working in a group. While both seem separate, it was able to tackle them at the same time due to him being her fellow leader for the event. He gets her flaws, so he's there to defuse the situation she causes, which she notices. Chizuru doesn't understand why what she's doing is wrong, but him being the person she loves, trying to help her figure it out is great because it's her current life clashing with her past one. Her workaholic attitude is what made everything fall apart for her, and she still hasn't changed that. Having someone who she's very close to try to help in making her understand this issue pushes her more than before. He tries to help, but she comes to the realization all by herself, which is a very big step for her. The arc isn't about the festival itself, but the making of it, because that's where Chizuru's development stems from. Her trying to work with others is the conflict. We also see a small rift form between the pair. It's important since they are getting closer to each other, seeing them struggle with the hardships of love is very absorbing. Arata's PTSD unintentionally hurts Chizuru, creating this misunderstanding between them, leading to him feeling awful and facing his past life and her being emotionally in pain, two things they have never dealt with. After seeing everything they go through, it's really satisfying seeing them enjoy the festival at the end. But in the OVAs, this is all covered in a quick montage that only lasts a few seconds. The cast is invested in the story itself, so some of the things they do during it are missing. Chizuru has braids and glasses on as part of her maid uniform. In the webcomic, it's because An made her do it to get a reaction out of Arata, leading to this funny exchange between the two of them and Honoka. While in the anime, this is left out, coming off as if this was her idea with no reaction to it. I know this is small, but she never came off as someone who knew what looks good when it came to appearance. The comic even confirms this, so this seems really out of character for her. Arata is also a focus, and aside from him dealing with his feelings for Chizuru, he's trying to distance himself from his friends. He's avoiding them since everything of him will disappear. He doesn't want to alter their memories of the festival. This was alluded a little before as he was leaving school early to get home, ironically getting him more involved. In the webcomic, he tries to avoid being part of any pictures, and Reina is the one who notices, leading to this great confrontation between them. It's the full circle moment I mentioned earlier, and it's really well done because she's now telling him the same advice he told her, and this is where he learns to start enjoying things more for himself. Events like these won't last forever, so he has to appreciate them. All of this is completely absent in the OVAs, making it seem that he got away with his plan. We never see him get called out, making him lose development and robbing us of this beautiful scene. But if anyone was done injustice, that would be Kazuomi. His story, like all the ones in real life, are pretty dense and show another side of him that we didn't know. His personal life is explored here because of how it's affecting his actions. We learn a lot about him and his family, leading to the reveal that his brother is a NEET. He was someone who worked hard in school and to support his family, but became a shut-in due to all the non-stop ridicule from his coworkers. This really left a scar on Kazuomi, because seeing someone you thought was very strong just give up on a battle you never knew they were fighting is heartbreaking. He's always reminded of this when he goes home, so it isn't something simple he can just get over. He's worried that he's taking the same path as him, which is why he's contemplating going to an external university rather than the one in his school because his brother went there. While at the same time, Reina is also a focus. She's worrying about their relationship. She wants to spend more time with him, to learn more about him, but he's being distant since he wants to keep his life a secret. She just wants to go to his house to meet his family, while he's worried that her opinion of him will change once she knows everything. I really like Reina here because her motivation makes sense, but goes in conflict with Kazuomi's while also being a natural evolution of their relationship. They got together halfway through the story, so now we can focus on them being a couple and all the ups and downs that come with that. His choices are slowly eating away at him while unknowingly doing the same to her. She doesn't know why he's not telling her anything, making her think the worst. Both sides of the story are slowly built up until they clash, leading to them having their first fight. There is no wrong person here because you can understand both of their reasonings. It's a great moment with a lot of weight to it that's also refreshing since we don't see this side of love a lot in anime and manga. He immediately goes to Arata's place to ask for advice, and Chizuru finds Reina, trying to help her feel better. Both being great testaments to how much they trust each other, something we saw develop since the beginning. Here he tells Arata and Chizuru everything, and both being NEETs themselves leads to humorous internal moments, but also some great advice that really opens his eyes. Both arcs are pretty big, which is why one happens after the other, but in the OVAs, Kazuomi's story is sandwiched into Chizuru's and is covered in 2 minutes. Reina's perspective is completely removed, making her come off as a jerk, and the topic that was really weighing on him in the comics feels feels like something very minor here. We get told everything rather than seeing it, and even what he says is an issue. ReLIFE has this great structure. Everything ties together, leading to these big multi-level payoffs. In the anime, he says that they've already gone out and fought, making it seem like they're a normal couple, which is the opposite of the comic. Reina was worried because they weren't doing normal couple things. The date was something special since it comes after the fight. Kazuomi asking her out had a lot of meaning since he shot her down several times before, and following the date, he then takes her to his place to tell her everything. Arata and Chizuru still give him the advice, but what made it feel like it mattered was that we saw the effects immediately afterwards. But here it's never shown, making it feel inconsequential and forgettable. Also, Kazuomi would never talk about something so personal at school. The entire scene is devoid of the emotion from the webcomic and doesn't change how we view him. The first season was able to trim the fat, only removing what was necessary without compromising the story. But here, the meat is cut out, leaving only the payoff, making them very hollow. Seriously, Chizuru only has one report written about her in the entire anime, while in less than 40 chapters, she has several. Kazu's story arc was actually subtly set up in season 1, but the university part is never mentioned in the finale. It really sucks since you can tell that TMS was trying to improve the anime. The OVAs do a better job in replicating Yayoi's comedic art style, which was barely there in season 1 since they had completely different backgrounds. Here they found a nice compromise where they did it a lot more, just in the detailed setting. It's very charming and one of the few things I really like from the OVAs. While season 1 lost a little of the style, it still kept all the substance, but here it's more style over substance. You can tell they wanted to make a better product, but due to the episode count we're very constricted. I don't think they were expecting such a low number, and what tells me this is this moment from episode 14. It's pretty much a shot-for-shot recreation of the chapters, from her chat with Honoka and Reina, to her talking to Rio with some slight changes like the setting, but nothing major. The conversation with them is important, because they're talking about her and Rio during the festival, wondering if it meant anything. It leads to them giving her the advice to just ask him directly about it, which it looks like she will, but instead ask about Arata. In the comic, it's this amazing triple whammy since it subverts the Reina Honoka setup, introduces a new plot point while also serving as her reveal. I really like how the anime and comic do it pretty differently, yet they're both just as effective. The anime slowly builds it up with the fireworks climaxing as they do, while the comic throws a huge curveball at you, or in the case of Chizuru, a straightforward ball at you. If they were going to directly lift the moment, why do the reveal in the first place? It's the best part about it. Seeing it before really takes away from it because we're aware that she knows Rio. The comic has this very loose panel structure that allows more freedom in adaptation, as I talked about earlier, but since they had so little time, they needed to introduce this important plot point, so they just remade it. We've seen that they can pull off combining moments together in the first season, so the reveal at the end tells me they had a different idea for it. TMS having to adapt over 100 chapters into 4 standard episodes was never going to work, and I was completely aware of that. But seeing the art style improvement just tells me how much wasted potential the OVAs are. We get a slight glimpse of what could be something amazing. The small time goes against everything Yayoi-san made, which is why I have a hard time recommending them. If you're someone who watched them as the anime finale, I would highly suggest checking out the webcomic because you're really missing out. I haven't talked about everything the second half does, but this video is long enough as it is, so I'll end it off here. This series really resonates with me because at its core, it's a story about people who have made many mistakes and live with them. It shows them as flawed and vulnerable. The reason we understand the fear, self-doubt, everything is because we've been there, which is the main message of the entire series. If Arata and Chizuru, NEETs in their late 20s who gave up on themselves, can change and find happiness, anyone can at any point in their life. All they sometimes need is a little push, and that push could be as tiny as talking to someone. Life is ever fleeting, so every moment, big or small, can leave an impact on someone, because you never know what they can be going through. It's this amazing series that gives you lovable characters, subverts its genre cliches in smart ways, tackles real issues, making it all believable while still being able to make you laugh. When you get to that ending, you'll feel as much happiness as their characters, and while their experiment ended, yours may just be beginning. And this is why I love ReLIFE.